the meeting today. By participating in this public meeting, you are consenting to your image, voice and comments being recorded and published. The Mayor and or the General Manager have the authority to pause the live stream if comments or debate are considered defamatory, otherwise inappropriate for publishing. Participants are advised that they may be subject to legal action if they engage in unlawful behaviour or commentary. We have Neil, apologies. Everyone's here. Neil, leave of absence. Call on Councillor Boland to do the prayer.
Thank you, Mayor Kennedy. Almighty God, we ask you to invoke your blessing upon this council, direct and prosper our deliberations to the advancement and true welfare of the people of the council area, our state and Australia. Amen.
Amen. Councillor Gallagher.
Yes, I acknowledge the traditional owners by the land which we meet, the Winnicalli people, and pay respect to those elders past, present and emerging.
Thank you, Councillor Gallagher. Councillor Allgate.
We take the time to reflect, remember and honour the over 800 miners that lost their lives and those that were crippled or maimed on the line of load. We thank the brave miners and their wives who were part of the 1919-1920 strike that lasted over 500 days and delivered a 35-hour working week. Mining is our past and our future.
Thank you, Councillor Allgate. We move on to item number 7, public forum session. The public forum session will consider submissions from the public regarding matters listed for this considered at this meeting, and also general managers. Members of public who have registered to address council will be given preference, and then if time permits, anyone else present at the meeting may address council. There was nil registration, so is there anyone from the gallery? Mr. Cools, Bob?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for your time. And I'd like to thank you for your informative newsletters that you put out every few months. I think they're quite good. I've got 3 little points from that I'd like to bring up, if I may. The first one I'd like to ask is about the mural that's going to be done on the art gallery. I can recall 5 or 6 years ago making up a thing to go on down there, exactly what they're going to do now. So it gives me a little bit of smug satisfaction that it's now going to go ahead. The other little comment I'd like to make on that one is, why do we always have to run to people out of town to tell us what is suitable for Broken Hill when we have a very vibrant lot of art people in Broken Hill, and most of them are known worldwide? So I'm just wondering why we run to people out of town. I looked up this.
Now that you've brought that up, Bob, at some stage, and councillors may want to consider it, I actually believe we probably do need to, and I know we're forming a few 355 committees and people don't always, we don't always have those numbers, but I think it would probably be a good idea to actually form a 355 committee to actually look at public art around the city, and that could include murals. I've been contacted by a couple of people now that would like to see the tanks that Essential Water have on the hills painted as murals. They're not wheat silos, but that'd still be a fantastic thing for the city. So maybe at some stage councillors might want to consider actually forming a committee, and people like yourself might be able to be on it, and they can come up with some ideas about public artscape around the city.
Well, yes, you're quite right in what you're saying, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for that. And the next question I'll ask on that subject then, just quickly, are the Broken Hill people going to get to see what the art people have come up with, and whether we approve it or not? After all, it is our art gallery.
So that wall that you're talking about out at the art gallery is not the area; it's the wall adjacent to that. So So, but at some stage we could do. So that's already been put there. If you remember the one that come before council that was going to go into the park, that's been put on the wall of the art gallery shed. Storage sheds there.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Now the next one is, and again out of your newsletter, a bit of an update on the Civic Centre debacle. There's a lot to look at in that and consider, and I know council will be considering it. It's been going on and on for yonks. The main people that are going to come out in front will be lawyers. You can bet on that. Any idea just how long it may go on? Because it may cost council money, or you may get something out of it.
So it's getting to nearing the very end of it right now. So it's before the arbitrators and the people that decide the costs. We're looking at the maximum of about 6 months before it's resolved. So hopefully it'll be resolved before that, but it's a maximum of 6 months.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And my last question or comment is on the new library. Now, until the Civic Centre thing is sorted out one way or another, whether we come out in front, break it even, or whether it costs us a lot of money, I'm not totally against the library concept, but I do feel the council, and again, your comments in your newsletter, rising costs, it's a big problem Australia-wide, worldwide, we live in Australia. Getting supplies of material, getting builders, hopefully that won't go broke, because many, many hundreds have in Australia in the last couple of years. I feel that until everything is sorted out, council should, even though you've put a hell of a lot of work into it already, put it on hold until things are balanced out and you can get a firm commitment on prices and build times. Now, another reason for me saying this is I got information from government on our new police station. As an example, it started at $11 million. It was then going to be 13. The figures I got late last week from government, $16 million. Their budget was finished. They haven't quite finished that building, so I'm told. And the car park compound in the police station is gravel instead of asphalt because they've run out of money because of rising costs. And for this reason, I think this council should very seriously consider putting the new library project on hold until everything gets stabled out and you know exactly where you're going and what it's going to cost.
So
Thank you for your time, Mr. Mayor.
thankfully, Bob, the council didn't go with a massive library. We went with one that was
Sorry, I missed that bit.
we didn't go with a library that was a massive amount of money of 25 million,
Yeah.
which would have blown out to 40 million, which would be dead in the water now. There's no chance that it could go ahead. We went with the $12 million, which was completely grant funded, which for us has been lucky. Those costs are blown out a little bit, but what council's decided to do is construct it in stages, which means we'll only spend the money that we've got in grant funding. And what we need to do after that, we'll reapply for grant funding to cover those costs. So it'll be staged. So so it'll be staged so it doesn't cost the community or the council any additional money.
Yeah.
So at some stage we will have to reapply. So we won't be able to do what we initially wanted to do with that money.
True.
But what it does also include is a refit of the bottom of the administration building, which then will be able to be used. That'll be the temporary library. But once we move that stuff back into the newly built library, that will then be extra area for the council to use, which will be an asset that council has then developed, which could be used for community offices or rented offices. So council will be able to have some sort of income stream. So this library has to start to be built to make sure we keep that $12 million we got in grant funding initially. So we'll do whatever we can for that amount of money, and it's already been reduced by about $2 million with negotiations with the general manager and contractors. So council's doing all they can to make sure that those costs are kept
I'm sure
within
you are,
what's
Mr.
signed.
Mayor, doing all you can, yeah, for sure. But rising costs are a big worry, and this is why I made that comment.
Yeah, so that's why it'll be stage funded. So if it does, we won't end up with a building that's sitting there half complete and then waiting for money. We'll do it in a manner that allows us to complete each section. And then if we have addition, and we can continue on.
Again, thank you very much for your time and
Thank
thank
you.
you for your explanations, Mr Mayor. I thank you all.
No worries. Any other members of the public? No, bring that session to a close. We move on to item number 8, minutes for confirmation. Move
Move the minutes.
Councillor Allgate, seconded Councillor Brown. Any comments on the minutes? All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Disclosures of interest. Are there any disclosures of interest?
I have two, Mayor Kennedy.
Yep.
Let's get me other bit of paper because I've got a broken computer. I have a conflict, a non-pecuniary conflict in policy in general item 8. And a non-pecuniary interest in further reports item 2. And I'll leave the chamber on both items.
No worries, councillor Boland. We have a mayoral minute number 1, which is Crystal Street, London Plain tree planting request. That mayoral minute number 4/23 dated March 21 be received. That council note that council staff recommended planting proposal of London trees in the nature strip to the Crystal Street from Iodide Street to Oxide Street. The London planted trees, Plantex exellifolia, are to be planted 2.5 metres from any infrastructure, including services, buildings and curb and gutters, and 5 metres from each of the 3 trees being planted. That the number of trees and exact location of plantings be determined on a site of council arbitrus in conjunction with Parks and Open Spaces Coordinator, Fabtech Advanced Steel Fabricator, Owner and Director. We have a seconder for that. Second. I move this motion. And I take note from Councillor Page and his concerns about the trees. And from my perspective, it's always good to listen to someone that actually knows about trees, and I give that completely to Councillor Page. But for this is a decision that is made in the effort to ensure that council works with business owners to improve the city. Any issues with these trees will be mitigated by council over the period. And then in the report, it can be seen that councils in Adelaide and that do use these trees as long as they're regularly maintained. Any issues will not result for at least 30 or 40 years. And if maintained properly, those issues will not arise at all. For me, it's about making sure that the council works in partnership with the community, but particularly in partnership with businesses around the town. If businesses around the town are prepared to put their money into beautifying the city, we as councillors should do all we can to make sure they do that. I wouldn't like to get to the point where a little thing which someone's so passionate about results in them losing interest in doing what they can for the city. So weighing up all the pros and cons, for me, this is the pros far outweigh the cons, but I still like to acknowledge that I did listen to Councillor Page on this. Any speakers against? Any other speakers for, or just speakers in general? Yep.
Speak for. Thanks, Mayor Kennedy. I've had a little bit to do with the owner of Fabtech, talking to him about this. He has invested probably up to $70,000 at this stage. He put underground tanks to capture all his rainwater. He gets 87,000 litres of rainwater. He put a ring main around so that it'll water all those. It'll cost, it's nil cost to council to do that. He's put pumps in there with about another $5,000. So he set it all up pretty well. He did a lot of homework himself before he did this. He looked up the council's code to see what trees that they were suitable. He then photographed everything in Adelaide, Melbourne and Sydney, looked at all that, and I believe he put a lot of work in, and then council has done all due diligence, and I think it's great to see a greening of the city, and it's a good thing. Thank you.
Any other speakers? Councillor Turley?
concerned about this particular tree, given the complexities of the report that was provided. My second question was, has the applicant considered other trees?
Yes, the applicant had considered other trees. The reason that London plane tree was chosen is because of the size of the leaf as opposed to the size of the tree itself. Claradash were considered as alternatives, but if you have a look at the leaf size of the Claradash, they're about that big as opposed to a leaf that big that gives that high canopy and good shade cover. So there was a number of trees suggested by council, but when it come back to the arbitrus, and the important part of the important part for the council and the council officers involved is that the arbitrus said that it needed to be 2 metres from infrastructure. In the report, we've got down 2.5 metres, which is 50 millimetres further than 500 mil further away than what it would normally have to be safe. So that in conjunction with some of the maintenance programs shouldn't be an issue, and that's why it was recommended by council officers. Would you like to speak, Councillor Page? No. Yeah. Oh, and yeah. I agree. And look, and I respect and I acknowledge your expertise in this matter. So, Councillor Brown.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I had I couldn't see in the report that this tree, and Councillor Page just mentioned that he doesn't believe there are any examples of this tree in Broken Hill. It just sounds very much like some trees that are in the one of the car parks, the Coles Village car park. So one in the lower car park just that faces onto Blend Street. I think they are, because I've seen those seed pods and the big leaves, and they haven't so far grown very tall. I noticed in this report, the arborist says it's not known how tall these trees grow, where there's less rain in a more arid climate. So do we have an idea whether they are going to provide, very much in favour of shade trees. I think, the building a tree canopy is an absolutely excellent idea, but I just have a few questions as to whether this tree is the best one.
So with the size of the tree, because they probably won't grow as tall as what they do in wetter areas, that was seen as a positive as far as infrastructure damage. The less tall the tree gets, the smaller the root invasion or the root bounding. So for our perspective, or the council's perspective on damage to infrastructure, it's better if they don't get so tall. So what the arbitrus was saying in that respect was damage that may be caused in areas where they get to 30, 40, 50 feet in height will not be as significant in Broken Hill, because they just won't reach that height. But the way they're pruned and maintained is what gives the canopy. So as they grow, you cut off the lower limbs, which causes the canopy to become a umbrella type canopy.
Just if I may ask another question too, I wasn't aware of whether I missed that in the report, that the business owner in question has put in quite a lot of infrastructure and has obviously taken on that, has offered that contribution. But apart from that, all the risk seems to me to be councils. If there is, say, damage to the water pipeline, that Essential Water has kind of indicated, and I know we're talking about where the planting is, and I do acknowledge that the proposal is to plant it 2.5 metres away from the pipeline, but, you know, we don't know how these trees are going to behave. But let's say that there is damage to infrastructure. Well, that responsibility and the cost of repairing that, given that council has been warned that that may be an issue, would that be council's sort of financial responsibility to pay for that to be sorted?
So this was also taken into account, and let's face it, if Essential Energy does the right things, there will not be pipelines coming from Stevens Creek, considering we just paid $500 million for pipelines to come from the Murray River or via Wentworth. We're talking at some stage, and I would assume, and I'd just about not only assume, it should be assured, the pumps at Stevens Creek will give out well before the pipeline that delivers water from Stevens Creek. I certainly wouldn't like to see Essential Water spend 30, 40, 50, 60 million dollars replacing pumps at Stevens Creek to continue to use a water supply along there. The damage that could be, and don't forget, these are concrete metal pipes that are just, roots are just not going to invade. What the roots can do is get within the collar of the connections, which there's only 2 along that area. And there is, so you're looking at a very minimal amount of money, considering the pipes themselves are not far below the surface. So it's a matter of digging down about 1 metre around to get to the bottom of it to clear any weeds that would get in the collar. And even if it was to get into the collar, it's only because the collar was already damaged to a certain degree. So when taking that into account, you can't damage the pipe itself. You can only damage the collar. The trees, once they're big enough, we're talking 30 years' time. I would strongly suggest that within 30 years' time, there's no way that they are still going to have them pumps out at Stevens Creek delivering water to Broken Hill for reserve. Councillor Holgate.
Thanks, Mayor. I just think that the council's taken prudent action. The council's gone out and sought the advice from experts experts in their field, but experts who are dealing with the same trees in Adelaide and a hell of a lot of them. So I think it's wrong in some ways to question the veracity of the information provided by the arborists. The arborists have basically said they're okay, and the root problem far out from the trees is mainly small feeler roots that are a nuisance, but not structurally a problem. So we've sought the information from the right people. As far as I'm concerned, the thing is to accept the information that's been provided.
Thank you, Councillor Holgate. Any further questions, debate?
I've just got a quick one, Mayor Kennedy.
Yes, Councillor Boland.
For me, quite frankly, any local business owner that wants to make the city a nicer place gets a tick from me. The due diligence has been done quite well. And ultimately, it's going to make Broken Hill a better place to live, and it's going to make that end of Crystal Street, which isn't as gentrified as a certain other end of Crystal Street, look better. So to me, it's a great thing all round.
Thank you, Councillor Boland. All those in favour? Councillor Gallagher, Councillor Boland, Councillor Allgate, Councillor Jewett, Councillor Chandler, Councillor Hickey, and myself. Against, Councillor Page, Councillor Turley and Councillor Brown. Thank you, councillors. Mayoral minute, item 1, supplementary agenda number 1, Menindee Lakes fish kills. Number 1, that the mayoral minute dated number 5/23 dated 29th 2023 be received. That council send correspondence to State and Federal Water Minister and Shadow Minister Roy Butler, MP Mark Coulton, asking for action and acknowledgement of the fish kills in and around Menindee Lakes. That is a result of eutrophication of the water bodies caused by excess phosphorus and nitrogen, likely from runoff from irrigation. The council notes excess nitrogen and phosphorus can be washed from farm fields and into waterways during rain events, and can also leach through the soil into groundwater over time. High levels of nitrogen phosphorus can cause eutrophication of water bodies. Eutrophication can lead to hypoxia, dead zones, causing fish kills and a decrease in aquatic life. Excess nutrients can cause harmful algal blooms in freshwater systems, which not only disrupt wildlife, can also produce toxins harmful to humans. Farmers apply nutrients on their fields in the form of chemical fertilizers and animal manure, which provide crops with the nitrogen and phosphorus necessary to grow and produce our food fibre. However, when nitrogen and phosphorus are not fully utilised by growing plants, they can be lost from the farm fields and negatively impact downstream water quality. Council rejects the concept that eutrophication that led to hypoxia, dead zones, was part of a normal flooding event, and is of the opinion it was directly caused by excess fertilisers washing from farms used for crops, which increased algal blooms that ultimately caused the dead zones, and that all governments take immediate action by way of parliamentary inquiry to ensure we never experience a fish kill of the magnitude we face today. That all mentioned parliamentarians are directed to the many similar cases of eutrophication that led to hypoxia, dead zones on the Mississippi River and around the world. Do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Allgate. The reason I move this is, and without a doubt, fertilisers at least add to the potential for hypoxia or dead zones. We haven't seen this in the past. It's not something that we'd seen other than about a year or two ago, where the exact same thing had happened, and it happened after a flood. As the floods wash off from the floodplains, they're picking up those fertilisers and washing into the river, causing algal blooms. Even if this isn't the result, there needs to be inquiry to make sure that whatever the result is, it is worked out and mitigated. One of the things that was spoken about was the amount of fish that breed in floodplains and then go back into the river. But we also must keep in mind that there wasn't any dead fish on the floodplains. They were all in the river, where the river had already become dead zones by the algae. There was yabbies up there that were climbing over each other because there was just no oxygen in the water whatsoever. So it's been too easy and what concerned me most was a lot of the bureaucrats were using the hypothesis that the phosphorus and nitrogen that was being overabundance in the river was coming from weed and animal matter that had been washed from the floods. Now, that is a form of fertilizer as well, but just remember that manure, plant material, they are actual fertilizers, and they're the same stuff that's used on for crops. And you must also remember that when growing any crop, cotton or others, you go after the most yield you can get, and you get the best yield by making sure you have the highest concentrations of fertilizer you can. Councillor Page.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to thank you for putting this mayoral minute forward. It's a huge issue, and for the last 40 odd years plus, the irrigators have had the support of the politicians to treat the river like a sewage drain. And 40 years ago and plus, a lot of the chemicals they used then were so toxic, they leached down in the soil. I have a property up in India, and I can show you up there, when the river's 20 to 30 foot lower, that water's still leaching out from the floodplain. Yep. So what toxins from the top of the system to the bottom, those chemicals have been put in those paddocks or fields, whatever they grow. It's a long term. Some of those old fashioned chemicals locked up in the system for a long, long time. They brag now how they don't use many chemicals. That's bull dung, because there was an article or a thing on TV the other day where one cotton grower was attacking the other cotton grower for spray drift. You know, it was killing his cotton crop. So if it's killing the cotton crop, what's it doing to everything else? You know, the river. I could go on, and it's a bloody disgrace what has happened. And thank you very much for bringing it up, Mr. Mayor.
I'd like you to keep on going, councillor Page. Go on and on, because
that's
these are very important issues.
They are, Mr. Mayor, and if nothing, I'll have to have a drink of water. If nothing will live in the water, what's it doing to us?
Exactly.
Anyway, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
No worries. Any other councillors speak? If just add to that mayoral minute, I've just been informed, and there was a paper sent around where there's 3,000 megalitres a day being released from Lake Menindee, but there's also 2,000 megalitres being released from Maramaroo to make sure that the water's oxygenised. So that's trying to increase the dissolved oxygen within the river. But the problem is, and they've reduced it at Menindee Lakes, but it's just been, I've just recently been informed that Menindee Lakes is dropping considerably. Sunset Strip is now going further down. You can't just put your boat in at the moment, which means that the water is. So if the seconder would also accept this, that we also write to the above people voicing our concern about the amount of water that's being released from Lake Menindee.
Just another comment. I had a phone call today to say you can't even launch your boat on the boat ramp in Menindee. The river's too low. It's a bloody
Right.
disgrace.
So I'm happy to have that as well, that they need to immediately address the releases from the Menindee Lakes. I know in their circular, they were saying that they are taking that into account, and they have to make sure there is enough there, but we need to, as a council, make sure that it's coming from us saying that we do have those concerns. So the seconder happy with that? Okay. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. There's another mayoral minute, which is in the confidential section. Could we have a mover that be dealt with at the confidential section? Councillor Turley, Councillor Gallagher, all those in favour? Carried unanimously. We have nil notices of motion, nil rescission motions, and nil delegate reports from delegates. We move on to number 14, the Works Committee. Item number 1, fruit fly control awareness. Do we have a mover for the recommendations for that? Councillor Gallagher,
Move that way.
seconded. Councillor Page, Councillor Gallagher, you'd like to speak to that?
Yeah, just quickly, Mayor Kennedy. Look, I think it's a great idea. We've got this going. We'll just move this forward, as expedite as much as we can, and get it moving so the people of Broken Hill can eradicate fruit fly. Just in front of me here, I spoke to a person today. That is a small bottle of fruit fly. That is a couple of weeks old.
Right.
He collects that. He makes sure all his fruit is looked after. He has these traps up, and this is a small bottle. Everyone wants to have a look at after the meeting. There's a couple of hundred in there, and it's only 3 weeks. So it's good to see whether the council is actually doing something for the community of Broken Hill.
For sure, Councillor Gallagher. Any other speakers?
Just make a
Yeah,
comment.
Councillor Allgate. Yep, Councillor.
Oh, just
Sorry.
make a comment, Mayor Kennedy. It's a pity that fruit flies don't, that's the item we're on.
Yeah, yeah,
That fruit flies don't attack cotton,
yeah.
and then there might be a different attitude by the government.
Oh, I think you might be right, Councillor Allgate. Councillor Page wants to say something there. All those in favour? Carried unanimously.
Just
Oh, sorry. Yes, Councillor Brown.
yeah, just a question there, Mr. Mayor. The recommendation is that 2 councillors be appointed to this meeting.
Yeah. So Councillor Page is one. Any other councillor like to be Councillor Chandler? Okay. No other, no. 2 councillors plus. Oh, 2 councillors plus Councillor Page. So we have a second councillor that would like to be part of that. Councillor Gallagher. No other nominations. All those in favour for passed unanimously. Thank you. Item number 2, the minutes of the Picton Oval Sports Ground Community.
Move the
Committee.
recommendation as written.
Move Councillor Allgate, seconded Councillor Gallagher. Speak to that, Councillor Allgate.
But all in the report.
No worries. Was speaking to former councillor Christine Adams, who would like to present a bit of a history on the Picton Oval at some stage, so that'll be good. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Minutes of the Memorial Oval Community Meeting. Mover,
Move that way.
move councillor Gallagher, seconded. Councillor Chandler, councillor Gallagher, you'd like to speak to that?
No, Mayor Kennedy, just before I said it's written there.
Just a quick one, not to put you on the spot. And council provide the committee advice on the facility potentially being used. What's the thoughts from the committee itself on the RV?
The situation in relation to that, with I spoke to the general manager at length about this matter. The point is we've had caravans there from time to time. It's a multi-use oval. It's used by every person that like schools, the trots, the show, and it'd be very, very hard to make sure this RV park's available at the times that are for this club. Look, they will put a lot of infrastructure into the Memorial Oval. The situation is we've got to look after the other users in relation to that. So I've spoken to the general manager at length about it, and we'll I should have something for the next council meeting.
Thank you, councillor Gallagher. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Move on to health and building. Item number 1, water quality in Broken Hill. You have a mover for that. Councillor Page,
I'll second.
councillor Gallagher, councillor Page, you'd like to speak to that?
You're saying about the water quality. There's no bloody quality, mate. It's a disgrace.
Yep. Any other speakers on that?
Yes, just there, Mayor Kennedy. Yeah, look, I spoke at the committee meetings about that. The excuse that it's the chlorine and it's the washout from that, look, it's sheer ludicrous. It was the situation is we've got as you mentioned before, quite a few times, a $500 million, $500 million pipeline to provide water to Broken Hill. The quality should be there. It should not need all the chlorine, all the other areas it says. I think it's ludicrous, and I just can't believe that a minister would write something to the council on that and forget us to accept it.
Yes, look, the water quality, some of the things that they measure or don't measure is the problem. And some of the things that they don't measure and don't have a safety level on are some of the things that cause that water to discolour. So it's fine to say that it is safe, but it's only safe to the point that they don't know it's not safe, as opposed to knowing it is safe. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Item number 2, Gara Arts Inc. Memorandum of Understanding. Have a mover for that?
Move that way.
Move councillor Allgate, seconded councillor Boland. Councillor Allgate, you'd like to speak to that?
No, I think it's in the report. The recommendation reflects the sentiments in the report, and I think it's a good thing that we continue to work with local art bodies.
Sure. Any other speakers? No. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Move to Policy and General Committee. Item number 1 is Temporary Traffic Management and Temporary Pedestrian Works Delegation Authority to Council from Transport New South Wales. We have a mover for that. Move Deputy Mayor Hickey, seconded. Councillor Jewett, Deputy Mayor.
Pretty straightforward.
Yeah, all pretty straightforward. No other speakers? All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Adoption of the draft revised civic centre civic ceremonial functions and representation policy. We have a mover for that.
Move the recommendation.
Move councillor Allgate, seconded Deputy Mayor Hickey. Speak to that, councillor Allgate.
No, only to say that I think a workshop to review the whole document is a worthwhile exercise.
Thank you, councillor Allgate. Any other speakers? All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Item number 3, adoption of the draft agency information guide. Mover for that. Councillor Brown, second, and Councillor Turley. Councillor Brown, you'd like to speak to that?
Just a couple of things I noticed reading that. There are a couple of mistakes in the first part, and I must admit I didn't read it with extreme care because a lot of it's repetitive, but I noticed Councillor Gallagher's name was misspelled and Mr. Brown was described as being acting CFO. So I think it just maybe
Yeah.
needs another proof.
You take those on. Right. If any councillor does have any other small details that need correcting, could they just pass that on to the general manager as well? So be moved with those amendments and following amendments, councillor Brown? Yep. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Item number 4 is establishing the Broken Hill Tourism Organisation. Do we have a mover for that? Councillor Chandler, seconded. Councillor Gallagher. Speak to that, Councillor Chandler.
Yes, after the presentation we had the other day in the council, the people we got working with us on that video clip are good, and I reckon if they keep pushing it now, it's a win-win.
For sure. For sure, Councillor Chandler. Any other speakers? Just briefly say, look, I think this is an important development. It is a business case to establish a member-based non-for-profit company limited by guarantee for the purpose of a tourism organisation. This will put council back to what it was in the early 2000s and late 90s. It really was an organisation that was the envy of the rest of the world. It was used as a rest of Australia. It was used as a model for many other councils that got into tourism after that. It was really something that worked well and grew the industry, and also had a lot of involvement, which then meant that the sector itself had a lot to do with driving tourism in Broken Hill. And what it also did was meant that there was many members of that committee that were involved in the operation and helped and reduce costs to council. Any other speakers before I put it? All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Item number 5, promotion of the Broken Hill at caravan and camping shows.
Yeah, move that way.
Move. So this is to consider the cost benefit of the caravans for consultation with the newly formed body. Seconded for that, Councillor Gallagher. Councillor Hickey.
Yeah,
Deputy Mayor Hickey.
As with the previous one, I think it's best to refer it back to the, once we get the previous thing sorted out, and then refer it back to them, because it's not, you can't make a decision on that now, but it is most important that we go back to those caravan and camping shows. I used to go to them, and the display the council had here was above and beyond what most any other council had. It attracted thousands of tourists to this town, and it was always well accepted by all those things. And I know they're a little bit costly, but it brings in the rewards, and Councillor Allgate used to turn up there and look pretty good at them. Thank you.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. The advantage as well is if you wait till after the forming of that, you can partner with different groups, and you can also ensure that there's potential for volunteers, which reduce the amount of council resources that are required to join those events. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Draft Broken Hill livability strategy for public exhibition. Do we have a mover for that?
Move the
Councillor
recommendation.
Boland, seconded Councillor Turley. Councillor Boland.
Thank you, Mayor Kennedy. Having a look through this report, it's very well written. I even noticed some Navivo word clouds floating around there. So they've used the good software to get the research done. And I particularly like the online job advertisements. They've changed since March 2020 is 128.9%. It's probably why so many of us are struggling to get employees, but that only points in one direction for the town, and shows that this report's been well thought out and well researched. So looking forward to getting the community's feedback and going forward with it.
Thank you, Councillor Boland. Any other? Councillor Brown?
Just,
And then councillor Turley.
it's really just a question leading on from what councillor Boland just said. Are we doing anything in particular to make sure that as many people as possible sort of read this and are aware of what it is? Because it is such a basically important thing. Other than just putting it on the website or somewhere and saying that this strategy is available, when we all know from experience that probably the number of people who will actually take the trouble to look at it will probably be quite small.
Do you have
I'm just
any
wondering
ideas, councillor Brown, yourself?
No, I
Chuck
don't.
some. No?
Really, I
Councillor-
don't know. Maybe we are dependent. We do depend on the media.
Yep.
To do that, to pique people's interest in this, because it's really, really important that people think about it.
General Manager.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just to go back a step, it was probably one of the most engagement we've had through our community engagement sessions in developing the livability strategy. It was a great turnout for our 2 community drop-in sessions. Normally when we run community drop-in sessions for these types of strategies, we might have 2 or 3 people turn up, but we ended up with tens of people, into 70 and 80 people across those sessions, as well as a really high response with our online surveys, and then going out to businesses, and also businesses that are coming into the city, what they're going to be looking for around a residential workforce, and also new residents coming into the city as well, what they were hoping to get, what they actually do like, and more importantly, what they need to have in the future to stay here. So through this next stage of the 28-day public exhibition, we will be advertising via the media and getting it back out there, but we will get it back to the people that were involved in the original consultation as well, to make sure that all their thoughts are being captured and they're happy with the draft strategy. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, General Manager. Councillor Turley.
I think the General Manager actually covered that. Thank you.
No worries. Any other comments? All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Item number 7, investment report for February 2023.
Move
Councillor
that.
Boland, seconded. Councillor Allgate. Councillor Boland.
Thank you, Mayor Kennedy. First of all, I'd like to congratulate the Chief Financial Officer on a great workshop yesterday. This report now, I think the community can have faith in the money. Their money's being looked after, basically. And I thank the Chief Financial Officer yesterday for putting on such a good workshop to make sure that we all understand what we're reading in this report, and it looks pretty good with the knowledge that we all gained yesterday.
Yes, thank you, Simon. It really was good. It actually, what it does is, what it showed was really the importance of the bonds and how the bonds work, and with maturity. So well done. Yeah. Any other speakers? All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Item number 8, leave the room, Councillor Boland. Let the homeless bloke get in. Re-establishing the central business district alcohol-free zone. Do we have a mover for that?
Move it,
Councillor Brown, seconded Councillor Deputy Mayor Hickey. Councillor Brown, you'd like to speak to that?
Not really, Mr. Mayor. I think it works well. I think it's well, people accept it, and they, I think by and large, know where it is. So I wouldn't consider changing it in any way. It's
No,
fine.
I think it's one of the most important alcohol-free zones in town, and probably the most important. Councillor Deputy Mayor Hickey.
I agree totally with what Councillor Brown said.
No worries. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thanks, Simon. Recommendation passed as written. Councillor Boland. Item number 9 is nominations for the appointment of community representative to Section 3.5
Move the
community.
recommendations as
Councillor Allgate
written.
moved,
Second
seconded. Deputy Mayor Hickey. Councillor Allgate, you'd like to speak to that?
Only to say that we should congratulate Ms Donna Pappas for putting her hand up and being prepared to volunteer.
Yep, very good. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Item number 10, minutes of the Ageing Well Advisory Committee meeting held February. Mover for that, Councillor Allgate.
Move that
Seconded,
way.
Councillor Gallagher. Councillor Allgate, you'd like to just quickly speak to that?
Well, being a member of that committee, Mayor Kennedy, I think it's only in its infancy. The last meeting was, I think, the second meeting. The aged care situation in Broken Hill, as you well know, and as lots of the councillors know and the public know, is really stressed to the maximum degree. And there are lots of things to address, not the least of which is the lack of available beds in nursing homes, the lack of staff, qualified staff in nursing homes because of the pay rates. And there's a multitude of problems, but I think this committee at least is about starting to identify those problems and work through them, hopefully, as time persists, because we've got something like 31% of people in Broken Hill, 31% of the population are aged over 60. And, that's a sizable component of the local community, and it's only going to get worse as time progresses, and we need to address all of the problems.
Yeah, look, I agree totally. I can really see that this committee is going to be really worthwhile in the future. There's already been a number of things that are being brought up that some councillors may not have known about if it wasn't through this committee. But I myself I've heard feedback from different groups that are already interested in being involved with that. Councillor Hickey.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Kennedy. I just, to point 8 of that recommendation, and that's, that the correspondence also requests that government sends emergency nurses to aged care facilities, because the registered nurses now that we have to have in aged care, we're going to lose something like 30 odd beds because we don't have the nurses. And as with COVID, they sent out emergency nurses. Well, they might have to do it. They made the rules. We didn't make the rules. They made the rules. And I think we've got to tell them now that they've just got to obey it and send us emergency nurses, so we don't lose any of our elderly people from this town, because they didn't live here all this time to be sent away.
No, couldn't agree more. There's no good having all the beds we need without the staff to man them. There's already over a dozen people at the hospital that is taking up beds that should be used for people that are in medical need. Instead, they're being used to bed people that are waiting for nursing homes. No one in Broken Hill wants to see one person have to leave the city to get aged care services. Councillor Turley.
Look, I just think just a little bit concerned about the language, and in terms of saying send emergency nurses, often that's interpreted as emergency nurses from an emergency centre.
Yep.
So maybe just think about how you actually fine tune that language.
Because government sends
Provide aged care nurses.
urgently provides nurses to aged care.
Hmm.
Yeah. All right. So just change that. You happy to change that? Yep. Councillor Gallagher, you seconded it. Would you like to speak?
No, I think Councillor Aldgate summed it up very, very well.
Yeah.
I think the committee will work well, and hopefully we'll get good outcomes for the elderly and the ageing of Broken Hill.
For sure. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. We move on to further reports. Item number 1, review of councillor misconduct framework from, so it's correspondence. We have a mover for that.
Move that
Oh,
one.
sorry, councillor Page, seconded councillor Boland. Councillor Page, you'd like to speak to that?
Yes, I've made my thoughts very clear. I think it's outrageous and doesn't make 1 ounce of sense, fairness. And how can you encourage any young person to join council being subjected, the only tier of government that's being subjected to this BS?
Well, I suppose
I try to phrase my words.
yeah, I suppose the important thing here is local government Brett Whitford, on behalf of the Minister for Local Government, the Honourable Wendy Tuckerman MP, former Minister for Local Government, the Honourable Wendy Tuckerman. We now have a new member for local government, Minister for Local Government, and hopefully, and from the brief conversations I've had with him, I think he's more likely to be open to some changes. I would like to see that different levels of code of conduct be broken up into different levels and how they're dealt with. Councillor Turley?
You may want to reconsider submitting it back to the new minister
Yeah,
because it hasn't been put into legislation as
Yeah.
yet.
yeah, we'll
So-
do. We'll just add that as well to the, hope, you move that, Councillor Page. Happy to do that, Councillor Boland. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Item number 2, Councillor Boland. Mandatory cashless gaming card. Do we have a mover for that?
Move that way.
Councillor Allgate, seconded. Councillor Gallagher. Councillor Allgate, you'd like to speak to that?
Mayor Kennedy, but some of the factors, some of the things that strike me as being crazy is the mandate that the clubs will not be permitted to make donations to sporting bodies and the like. I mean, back in the days when the sister city was.
No, I think it's political donations to political parties, Councillor Allgate. They
Only,
can-
only political parties.
Yeah,
is it?
yeah, I
Oh,
think it's
sorry.
about stop influencing
I see.
political outcomes.
Yeah, withdraw.
Yeah, I think this is a much better result for the clubs and the club industry than what was proposed by the coalition government. Any further, Councillor Allgate? No. Any further comments? Councillor Gallagher?
Just quickly, the report's well written and we stand by what we've decided on and we'll just reaffirm it.
All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thanks. That is passed as written. Item number 3 is Disability Inclusion Action Plan, Key Performance Indicators Progress Report for the period ending December. Do we have a mover for the recommendations or a mover in general? Councillor Gallagher, seconded. Councillor Allgate. Councillor Gallagher, you'd like to speak to that?
No, Mayor Kennedy, it's written in the
That's
report.
only the donations, only the political part.
All those in, Councillor Brown?
Yeah, it's, I'm not sure whether it's probably not the right place to mention this, but because the election is just so fresh in, well, my mind anyway, probably all of our minds. One disability access issue that comes up every single pre-poll is, having a disabled park, right in front wherever it is. The Electoral Commission really don't seem to consider very carefully disabled access and all sorts of things when they obviously go for the best deal they can get when they're renting these premises. But every single time we go through this drama of getting a disabled park or a 15-minute park or something there. I don't know whether that can be built into something. I mean, it's probably shouldn't be council's responsibility to see that it happens, but every single time for the last 3 or 4, elections of various kinds, it's been an issue, and council's had to be asked as an emergency thing to, provide those resources. I'm just wondering whether we can sort of anticipate that and have it built into somewhere that's an important part of the process.
Would you like to move a number 4 that we write to the Electoral Commission and the appropriate minister?
Yeah, certainly I would do that they should include that.
Yeah.
And maybe give some examples of, the last few, I suppose the state and local government ones, since they're the ones that the New South Wales Electoral Commission's been involved with. They obviously don't do that. And I think it's probably, maybe the individual booth, the officer in charge of that, if they think about it, but it needs to be built into their planning.
For sure. happy to accept it. Councillor Turley?
And maybe that's the contract the government has with the Electoral Commission when they develop their contract, that it's written in there, rather than wait till the announcement of where the site is. It should be that the government requires accessibility to that contract.
Yep, no worries. Any other speakers? All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Item number 4, minutes of the local traffic committee. Councillor Brown, move that. Yep, seconded.
Second,
Councillor Allgate, Councillor Brown, like to speak to that?
I think it's fairly clear. I think one of those issues was one, I think there was some correspondence about that matter that was circulated to all of us just yesterday or the day before, I think, relating to that. It's a very nuisance issue with the trucks that park.
Yeah.
Well, in that particular spot, but it could happen anywhere, I suppose. And I think a few years ago it was at the Shell.
Yeah.
There, a real issue. I don't know what we can do. I know the traffic committee sort of wrestled with that one a bit. There's not a great deal they can do, and it is a police matter too. Outside that, as much, but it is a real nuisance to the households concerned.
For sure. So this is just for everyone that doesn't understand it. It is the service station near the junction. Trucks park across the road and park across the driveways of the properties there. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Item number 5 is the action list. Councillor Gallagher,
As always, I'll move that way.
for sure. Seconded. Councillor Hickey. All those, all green?
All green.
All green. Councillor Brown?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, just a couple of questions. At one, I see that there's some Crown Lands. Again, I mean, we're still waiting for some action on the land for the solar array. I mean, we're never going to do this, and this is a really important part of our, our strategy. If we don't get some action, there's probably nothing we can do. But I just thought I'd mention it to see if there is anything we can do.
General Manager, answer your question, Councillor Brown.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. We actually met with Crown Lands today to discuss options moving forward in regards to that land. Unfortunately, that piece of land that we thought was completely able to be used by council via Crown Lands actually did have an Aboriginal lands claim applied to it. The situation that we found ourselves in was because of the backlog with Aboriginal land claims, that it had been lodged many years ago, but the systems hadn't been entered into the system to show that an Aboriginal land claim had been lodged. So we've asked Crown Lands to go back and have that process expedited with the appropriate agencies so that it can be determined, so that we can then work with the appropriate Aboriginal Land Council to have that land sorted out. It is a large block of land and we only need a small portion of it. So there's ways around it, but that's been the hold up. And unfortunately, it's like many things are being held up at the moment through those processes. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, General Manager. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Questions taken on notice? Is there any? Oh, there was nil questions. Questions for the next meeting arising from items on the agenda or during this meeting? Has anyone got? Councillor Turley?
Probably a Crown Land issue. So I'm taking it quite extensive on this. Mr. Mayor, last night we had an opportunity to look at the Line of Load Cafe, and I was quite concerned about a few issues about how that's going to function and attract a tenant. And I think Crown Land missed an opportunity there in a lot of their design. I know Councillor Hickey had spoken about it before, and I know some of the local businesses have raised concern, and I asked them to send you a text today. Yeah. And I thought that we should particularly write to Crown Land and ask them if these issues could be rectified before it goes to the market. Otherwise, we won't be attracting anyone. It's a jewel in the crown on the top of the Line of Load. Certainly is a great opportunity for us for tourism, for locals, but I think in the design that it is, it's going to be hard to attract a tenant unless Crown Land addresses those issues.
Yeah, so some of the issues that Councillor Turley is talking about is a walk-in freezer, access to our fresco area, kitchen dishwashing area. Yeah, Councillor Meeking.
Thanks, Mayor Kennedy. Yes, I spoke to David Trinder again last night and again today about it. And David was sending in an email today for us too. And I looked at that with him today and answered all those things that we think we should. I think we must write to Crown Land because they won't listen. They just won't listen. And told them that well and truly before they redid the model, but they didn't want to know. Yesterday they asked me again. I told them exactly the same thing and they still didn't listen. And then David brought it up. And I think if we write away from council and because if they don't attract someone, we need that open. We really need open.
So if councillors are willing, just before, if councillors are willing, can we have a motion for an urgent motion? Someone move that. Councillor Turley, seconded. Councillor Gallagher, all those in favour? Carried. Someone would like to formulate a Councillor Page before a motion.
If I could just make comment that I've had a phone call today in regard to this issue and they made it very clear if we let it progress the way it is, it's going to be huge loss to the location and to Broken Hill. They need to finish the upgrade that will be a benefit to whoever runs it or and the future of Broken Hill. So I'm glad, Mr. Mayor, you've taken that on board.
Councillor Turley, you'd like to move?
So perhaps the motion could be that as a matter of urgency, council writes to Crown Land
And the
expressing-
appropriate minister.
and the appropriate minister, who's the minister? Well, it'll be acting minister for, what would it be, Penny? Anyway, and expressing our concern on the current design of the Line of Low Cafe and ask that these issues be addressed as a matter of urgency.
And lack of facilities,
Design of
required
the-
facilities.
Yeah, functional design of a cafe, outside toilets. The lighting fittings themselves are so,
So
we're past the youth
We'll
by
just
date.
move this motion and
Yep.
then we'll just, part of the motion will be to add what we need to, if that's all right, Jay. So any of those, so we'll move the motion without the detail and if councillors would like to provide that detail to the general manager before the correspondence is sent. You happy to second that?
Yeah, happy to second that.
Any debate on that or any further speaking? Look, it is important and they acknowledged it last night that they're talking about probably low hundreds of thousands of dollars to do that up and no one's going to go into that with that expenditure. So they do understand that it's not necessarily acceptable. But what's going to happen if we don't let it go out like that, someone that does do it's going in there to fail because anyone that would do a good job knows that they can't do it because it's not up to scratch. So the only people who are going to get there is someone who doesn't know how to do it. Yeah. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Questions still on for the next meeting? Any further questions? No. Move on to item number 18, public forum session. Do we have, this is the second forum. We'll consider submissions from the public regarding matters that were considered by council at this meeting only. Any speakers like to speak about any of the items that were discussed during the meeting? No. Oh, yes. Mr. Bevan, Peter Bevan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and councillors. You probably noticed that I'm getting a bit old and I've got a job to get to the council meeting, but you could assist us elderly persons by putting a couple of handrails in this building, one over there and one over here. Could you do that, please? And then we'll be here more often, perhaps. That'd be terrible.
Okay.
And the other thing is, of course,
Just before you go on, Mr. Bevan, we'll accept that as an urgent matter to be submitted for the budget process. So council like to move that urgent matter.
I'll move that.
Councillor Allgate,
Second
seconded
that.
Councillor Chandler. All those in favour it be urgent. You'd like to move that the rails be considered for the budget, Councillor Allgate?
Yes, Mayor Kennedy.
Seconded.
It's been discussed several times.
Seconded,
yes.
Councillor Hickey.
Bob's had a go at it already.
All
Yep.
those in favour. So there you go. Peter. it's now
Let's
on
fix
the
one
budget.
thing already tonight. I'm sure it'll be right by next meeting. The other thing is, of course, this red tape that holds everything up in Australia, not the least of which are, of course, native title. And if you talk to people around White Cliffs area there, you'll hear all about that pretty quickly. But, you know, we seem to get bound up in all sorts of things. Smithswell Creek on the way to Tibooburra could be fixed with a couple of dozers in about 4 days. Move the sand from below that crossing, let the water run free. It'll keep the sand going with it. There'll be no problem again. But you can't do that because you're not allowed to move the sand out of the blasted creek from below it. And that's just a
Exactly.
small example of holdups around about the place. You know, if you found a big block of silver somewhere and you're going to mine it, it'd be 6 to 10 years before you could get any out of it. That's the way mining is now.
Yep.
Okay, thank you very much.
I couldn't agree more, Peter. Bob? Oh, no, you're only letting him out. Okay, well, we're moving into confidential session, closed session. There's only 3 items to be discussed, so if people want to hang around, it won't be too long. Oh, only one item. Ah, well.
Move that way.
Why did it make me think that was that?
I'll second that.
Yeah, could we move to go? Yeah, moved, Councillor Hickey, seconded. Oh, yeah, done it. All those in favour? Yep, carried unanimously. Thank you, everyone, for staying around. There was only one item and the General Manager will now read it out.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Item 1, Merrill Minute number 6/23, subject Civic Centre legal matter update. Council resolved in closed session 1, that Merrill Minute number 6/23 dated March 29, 2023 be received. 2, the council note the Merrill Minute and information provided by the General Manager. 3, that the council terminate the engagement with Redenbach Legal Proprietary Limited to carry out the cost assessment application. 4, the council engage BAL lawyers, an approved panel legal provider, to take carriage of the matter and provide advice as necessary. 5, the council continues proceeding to recover legal costs through all available avenues as outlined in the below report. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you, General Manager. That brings the council meeting to a close. Thank you for your attendance.
Putting it over the rest of the day. Filling the rest of the day.